Bertie?
No flaps.
So, I think they're all burning to know more about waste plan and how can you actually make money out of waste. But let's not start with that. Let's start just with who are you? But take it back. Take it back. I want to know if you were that clever kid at school that was making money everywhere, selling stuff, finding a plan. Were you the entrepreneur kid who just knew how to fox money out of everybody? Were you the businessman then already? Just start there and then just take us quickly. We want to see if you're a real human being.
Okay. I grew up in Nigel, between Heidelberg and Springs. The way they taught us to count is, you must know how many bullets is in a 9mm parabellum. You passed matric then. So it was rough. So, of course, you learn to hustle on the street with your fists and your knives and all your mouth. So, yeah, I did buy and sell stuff in school. I then...
What did you buy and sell? Or are you not going to tell us?
No, I'm not going to tell you. I then started a mobile disco. So I was the oak who had the garage parties. So, you know, when all the mom's children go to these garage parties, I was the guy making the music, putting the parties together, and then
That's
making
amazing.
the money. Yeah.
Okay. And then you studied something?
So I also did the school sokkies.
Uh-huh.
That was a good money spinner. And then I remember so I'm 42, when I was in standard 9, in standard 9 we had to decide, you know, where you want to be enrolled into the army. And I decided this is going to be my life goal, to skip army. So I considered all options, and the only viable option was going to university. So I convinced my parents to pay for university, and I then went to Potch, and I chose randomly all the subjects I liked most, and that made up Stads- en Streeksbeplanner, city planning. But then in my first year, I started selling advertising spaces on calendars. We will have the rugby team on the calendar, and we'll sell all the advertising spaces around the photo on the calendar with all the rugby fixtures at the back. So, and then I started making money. So by the time I got to my second year, I just couldn't handle it anymore to be a student. So I convinced my parents that this is a waste of my life. So can I please leave and go make money? And they said, sure, but then you're on your own. And then I moved from Nigel.
What do they say now? They say it worked.
Well, my mom had to go for 2 knee operations for all the prayer.
Ah, okay.
So I decided to move to Cape Town because I wanted to be a surfer. So I moved to Cape Town because I had long hair. Can you believe it?
Had.
I did.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, so I wanted to advertising agency, and I needed to make some money before I could do that. So I decided I'm going to find a get-rich-quick scheme. So I became a vacuum cleaner salesman.
Really?
Yeah. So
I didn't know they really exist.
Yeah, I started selling vacuum cleaners. So I made money and I lost money. And I remember the people that I worked for, they said, if you sell 100 of these vacuum cleaners, they cost 10,000 Rand a vacuum cleaner back in the 90s. If I sell 100 of these, then I can go anywhere in the world and they'll send me on a holiday. So I recruited a whole lot of people and we sold the 100 vacuum cleaners. And then I went to Perth to go surf. And while I was there, I ran out of money, so I knocked on the next vacuum. It's a Kirby vacuum cleaner. So I knocked on the next Kirby office's door and said, hey, I want to come sell some vacuum cleaners. So they said it's fine. And I remember some significant moments. I did a demonstration for a guy who never bought the machine, but he said, I've got a friend in Cape Town. His name is Vancho. Take this bottle of wine back to Cape Town and give it to him. So I did that. Vancho bought the machine from me. But Vancho liked me. And then he said, you want to invite me to a business breakfast. That's where something significant happened. So Raymond Ackerman was launching his first book. And he invited me to that function, and I asked Raymond to sign my book. And then I said, while you sign it, just jot down your email address there. And he was chairman of Pick n Pay. It was a 60 billion organization back then. And he looked at me and he said, why do you want my email address? And I said to him, I believe I'm going to be a businessman one day. I'm going to make a big difference in this country, and I need help. So he said, phone my PA and come see me. So for 6 months, I did nothing. I didn't know what to say to him. And after 6 months, when I phoned her, she goes, Bertie, I've been waiting 6 months. What took you so long?
Wow.
So that was significant because somehow this man that leads this big organization saw something in me. But if I now look back, it must have been God. Somehow God decided for me to get onto this journey that He's got planned for me. He needed to send someone like a Raymond to help me. So back then, he then gave me the principles on how to build a good business, which is the 4 legs of the Pick n Pay table. And he said, if I find a business idea that fits this, I must come to him and he'll help me every step of the way. And as long as I keep doing what he tells me, I can keep coming back. And it's been 15 years that I've been keep going back.
You still go back?
Yeah. So he then became my mentor to help me understand how to do business. So I had zero experience in business, and the experience I got from him. So that put me on a fast track because there was a whole lot of lessons that I didn't have to learn because he helped me.
That's amazing. Amazing story. All right, so we're going to nearly get to Waste Plan. Just briefly, you have 4 children and 1 wife?
Yes.
You want to tell us anything about them in 30 seconds? Are they amazing?
Yeah, so my wife is a missionary from Canada. And she was on a 40-day fast, and God said to her, sell your goods and come to Africa. And I did a friend a favor to go pick up 2 volunteers from the airport one night.
And
she was one of them.
She was one of them. That was the beginning. Okay, great. And how old are your kids?
10, 8, 6, 3.
That's good. Okay, Waste Plan. You're making money out of nothing.
Yes.
Tell us about it. How does it work?
So I've got Joanne sitting here. If anyone wants to know, ask Joanne. She's one of our top salespeople.
But she tell that. No, you must tell.
So we pick up waste. We manage waste for clients who have waste. So this building would have waste. Our staff would work in the basement where all the waste come together, and we will sort it and keep it in single streams. Because when waste is in a single stream, it has a potential value. When you mix them together, they lose value. So we put systems in place to help keep all the waste streams separate, and we would then have people in the basements sorting the waste. Our vehicles will collect it, take it to our factories, compress it, and then we'll sell it.
Who buys waste?
China.
Do they buy a lot of waste?
A lot of waste.
And you have how many employees?
1,600, somewhere there.
That's amazing. I mean, if somebody brought this business idea to me, said, look, we're going to make money out of waste and have 1,600 employees, I would have said, you're crazy.
Yeah.
But that's why I am where I am, and where you are where you are. Yeah.
Yes, and we are crazy.
Okay. So what is your view on generosity?
Okay, so to understand how I developed this view, I want to just explain something significant that happened. So, of course, with a mentor like Raymond, you have lots of success and you have success on success. But if you have success for too long, something happens in your heart, and that's pride. So pride slowly but surely crept in, because if you just can't do anything wrong, you start believing it. And if people around you start telling you that you believe it. And so we had lots of success, and then in about year 8, 1 or 2 bad business decisions, and I ran the thing completely into the ground. We were bleeding money like an open tap. We had SARS already issued a court order to close us. We were insolvent, and so that we had a very bad patch over 2011 and 2012. And that's in that time that I went back to God, where I started inquiring from Him, about most of the decisions. Because I found that most of the decisions we take is to give us glory and to give our flesh glory. But during that very difficult time, I went back to him and I asked him, help me understand how my decisions can give you glory. And graciously, God took me through that patch. I learned a few lessons, and he turned the thing around towards the end of 2012. And we started making money again. So in January 2013, I was quite facefuus. What's that in Engels? Klaar, moeg beklei. And I was fasting, and God said to me, I want you to give away. So what did I have to give away? A bankrupt business, lots of debt. At the time, we asked all our management to take a 30% salary cut, me included, so we started living off credit cards. So we had lots of debt. So I said to God, I have nothing to give. And I felt God say, you've got equity. Anyway, so I said to God, show me how and I will. And during the year of 2013, I kept on creating these schemes to give equity away to God. How do you do it? How do you give God equity? And then I met Fransjo van die Kerk. And he did it 30 years previously. And he said, don't worry, I'll help you. And so he basically gave me the trust deeds of Mergon, and his team came around me and we helped him. We formed something new, which is just a copy of Mergon. But in June 2013, I had to transfer shares because I said to God, if you show me how, I will. God then showed me how, and I asked God, how much equity you want me to give you, and he kept quiet. And so eventually I settled on 30%, because it was still a bankrupt business. It's still a good deal. So I couldn't transfer the shares. I couldn't. I came up to the point of transferring the shares, and I just couldn't. And there in that struggle of, but I made God this promise. Here he showed me the way. He sent me a guy like Fransjo to help me. Here's everything, just transfer the damn shares, and I couldn't. And that's where I started learning, who is Mammon really? Mammon is a spirit that slowly creeps into your life, that keeps convincing you that you need control, power, and influence. And at the time where I had to transfer these shares, I was confronted with the reality of Mammon and how much control he had over my heart and my desires to have control and power and influence. And when you start giving away equity, you start surrendering. And luckily, I got myself to the point to release the shares. And then I felt for the first time in my life what surrender really, really felt like. So when I think generosity, I think surrender. You cannot be generous unless you have a heart of surrender.
Wow. All right. And then tell me the story further. So is it now easy? Just there goes all the money. It's easy. Is it satisfying?
No, it's not easy. So since I did that, I invited God into the business as a shareholder. And when God owns shares in something, he will do with that business whatever he wants to do. And if you get in his way, he will remove you. So I had to make very sure that I seek him in the decisions and I represent him well as CEO. If he's shareholder, I'm CEO, he can kick me out. And countless times God has asked us to start giving more, and each time it's been difficult. But each time that I obeyed and my team obeyed, we experienced more of what it means to surrender, and then we started experiencing the benefits of that.
But tell me, does your whole team buy into this? Because you're the top guy, so if you say this is how it works, but all the rest have to now sort of abide by this. Do they buy into this vision?
Yeah, they don't have a choice.
Yeah, but was it difficult to get them there?
Look, the guys that were there during the struggle saw the whole movie. So for them it was easy. That we went through the struggle together, we survived. We got out of this. We could earn normal salaries again. We paid back all the debt. We became solvent, and we started growing our business. So They had the evidence. I just had to remind them of the truth. Remember back then. So it was easy. And then we just make sure that new people we bring in are aligned with that. And alignment is a very tricky thing. You can be unequally yoked with other believers that are not aligned. Because if my friend is a believer, but if he is building his own kingdom for him and himself and his family and his children's education first and Jesus second, him and I are not aligned. So I had to make sure that when I bring people into the business at a senior level, they are aligned at building Jesus and his kingdom first through business, our networks, and our skills. And then secondly, he will look after us and our families.
All right, awesome. Okay, I'm not sure if you've covered this actually in the story already, but we have this practice to, when we interview somebody, to talk about a certain dilemma or crucial crossroad, or and then we hear what the floor says, if they were in your shoes. So is there perhaps something specific you can reference from your experience that was really a difficult decision?
So in the beginning years, I didn't come up with the idea. I had a friend who was full-time employed, who had the idea, and he approached me while I was still a salesman and said, I've got this idea. I've already checked it with some of my clients. They will buy the service, and I will fund the startup. Would you please just run this thing and grow it? And all he wanted was 30% shares. So it was a fantastic deal, so we did that.
Is this pre-waste plan?
No, this is way in the beginning years of Waste Plan.
Beginning years of Waste Plan.
So after 3 years, he came back to me and said, I'm a high-risk person, and he's uncomfortable being in partnership with such a high-risk individual. And would we please part ways? Can I buy his shares back? And I said, sure. And he said, he'll make sure that for the first year, he will willingly put himself under a restraint. And then after 1 year, he'll set up another company like this and then go after my clients.
He said that?
Yeah. Am I happy with that? So I said, do I have a choice? And okay, so we did the settlement and I paid him. And immediately after year one, he went after the most profitable client. So that was the very first dilemma that I had to face. How do I deal with this?
Shoot him. All right. Let's hear what you guys say. So let's just talk around the table for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, and we'll get some feedback. What do you guys say? What do you do with a guy like this?
When we listened to Rory's video, he said that we will give account about 5 things before God: time, treasure, talent, opportunity, and relationships. And one thing that we many times as Christians are eager to talk about is time, talent, treasure, opportunities, but we forget about the relationship aspect. So I equated it to say that if you look at it from a non-profit environment, the donors that's giving to a ministry belongs to God. It's God's people. They donate. So I will give, as a business owner, I will give account about my relationships. So the customers, in a sense, also belongs to God. It's God's customers. So if I'm in a kingdom business, I'm serving God's people, God's customers, it belongs to Him. He's going to measure me, keep me accountable on that relationship if I have served them well. So if I serve them well, I've got nothing to fear because it's God's customer. So any competition open, go and look at them. You can serve them better, then that's God's purpose.
I think it's our table came up with the idea that you have to reinvent. You have to go back to your roots, thinking of the fruit of the Spirit, that it's deeply rooted and that it will grow and provide the fruit. So you have to go and reconfirm your position with your existing customer base, making sure that what you give them is unique and that it's definitely a unique selling proposition. And over and above that, believe in what you do and trust in God. And it will work out to the best of you. So maybe next time I can sit in that chair you're in now.
Okay. All right, let's hear what these guys are very clever, but if they're really in this situation, I wonder what they would really have done. Let's hear what you did.
So God says that you have to love Him first and then others like yourself. So when you love yourself you're selfish, right? So the way we love ourselves is we look after ourselves first before we look after others, and we do what's best for us. So I asked him, what does that look like in the marketplace? How do I love others like myself? And I felt God say, if I was him, how would I want this situation to play out? Because remember, he had the relationship with that client first. He was the one with the original idea. He was the one who bankrolled this whole thing. He was the everything who started this thing up. So I approached the client. I said to the client, we've split up, and we believe that he can offer them a better service than what we can. And I phoned him up and said, please have the client.
Wow.
And he didn't touch any other client after that.
Really?
Yeah. So it was painful. It wasn't that easy. So doing what's best for others has become the theme of business with employees. If an employee, what's best for that employee is always the question, especially difficult employees.
Is that like a big thing in your company, doing what's best for others?
Yeah, because that's what love is, isn't it? So if God says we need to love others like ourselves, then how do we love employees? How do we love service providers? How do we love difficult clients? How do we love our opposition? We do what's best for them. And somehow God turns it around and he gives us what's best for us in return.
That's amazing. All right. Finally, before we give over for questions and answers, if you leave them with a final challenge or a final word or just a summary, or for you the core of this whole generosity issue, what would you tell us?
So Jesus says you cannot serve God and mammon, which means there's either or and not both. And I think each one of us in our hearts have to go deal with this issue. We need to sit before God and help him understand who is mammon and how is mammon manifested in our hearts. And the way it manifested in my heart is building a kingdom for myself, building a security for myself, for me and my family, making us financially independent, moving our money offshore for when the government mess up, our family is secure. Financial independence of what? So that's what God revealed to me, and I think it has a different story for each person. It's typically something that's driven from fear, and our response to the fear, that's where I felt mammon has this control over my life. So I have to choose, am I going to serve the fear, or am I going to serve God? And the world tells us bigger, better, faster, and more. And Jesus says it's better to give than to receive. So for each one in our business decisions, we will always be confronted with those two things, bigger, better, faster, more. And there's always an opposite to that. It's better to give than to receive.
Wow. All right. The floor is open for some questions for Bertie. Werner.
Because I have the mic, I want to ask the first one. Bertie, can you tell us a little bit about Nika? I heard something about it. What does it mean and what's your involvement there?
So Nika is the carbon copy of Mergon. We just named it something else because Mergon is a name in the business community and we didn't want to confuse people. And Nika is the Zulu word for gift. So we created Nika, and that is really just the shell, the venue through which God represents himself in our business as a shareholder.
And what do you do at Nika?
Nika receives money from Waste Plan, and some other business owners had similar convictions that they wanted to give God equity, so they also donated their equity into Nika. And Nika's got an independent board. Nika's also, it's a vehicle that represents God Almighty, but our government considers it a black person because it's a broad-based black ownership scheme, so we get full black ownership points for that. So that's the cherry on top. But it commits its money and its resources to uplift poor people through education and preaching the gospel.
Wow. Yeah, Bertie, that's an amazing story, and I really appreciate what you've told us today. What I want to ask is, what is difficult? Tell us about your staff. Do they ever strike? And if they would strike for a wage increase, how would you handle that in line with what you've now told us? And I want to just put that in one perspective. Staff will always ask for 12 or 14%, and you will think 7 is appropriate. And there's disagreement, and then you have this kingdom principle, and you actually want to bless and give. Do you have a story or a scenario that you can explain that?
Yes, we had a strike. At that time, when we were bleeding so much money, at that time, the staff decided to also strike. And God showed me that the staff ran to a union because they stopped trusting me and my management. By the time that they have gone to the union, it's already too late. My job is to reestablish the trust. And we got through the strike. And we vowed never again. We will make sure that our staff trust us so that they would never go to a union. So there is no union in our business, and we don't allow it. And when people join a union, we act quickly. We engage with them and we ask them, tell us your grievances. Why did you choose a union to represent you? They tell us and we fix it, and then they resign from the union.
Bertie, is there a story of one of your employees that maybe sorted garbage and then, typical rags to riches type of story?
Many stories. We had an earlier strike than the one I just told you about, which was much smaller. So one of our cleaners, her name is Cynthia Vundisa, and she was working in a factory in Somerset West, and she commanded, she got the people together to strike, and they did do a strike. So we just decided, let's find the leader and go after the leader, and that was Cynthia. And in our engagements with her, we found that she was just representing what the grievances were that all the other people had, and we just never paid attention to it. So, so Cynthia became our best employee, and she was a cleaner. And today she is the staff manager of a factory with 200 people.
How do you get to a point where you say, Lord, this is what I'm giving you, and this is how I'm going to give it?
So you either form a non-profit company or a trust like we did, and you ask us and we will help you to set it up, or you just give your shares to Nico.
Bertie, compliments are in order. It seems that the Lord has used mentorship to really raise you in your own, path. Can you perhaps indulge us on whether you yourself have actually extended the generosity and taken up some, mentees that you are now, raising, I reflect on Mergon's credo, and they say they are expanding the kingdom through business. And if you look at the complex problems that we face in this nation, we really need, creative solutions. And I mean, if you think about unlocking value through managing waste and not mining anything, it's really encouraging that I think there are a lot of those kind of things that can happen. Thanks.
What was your question?
So mentorship, are you generously paying it forward, as it were? And I mean, so...
Oh, you need to keep it short.
I try to. It's very difficult. So I make myself available if anyone wants advice, but I can't make him follow the advice. So if he does and he keeps coming back. Mr. Ackerman said to me, I'll tell you exactly what to do. As long as you do what I tell you, you're welcome back. The day you do what you think is best, don't come back. And I find that often. People listen and then they make a decision, they do something else.
Just briefly, Mr. Ackerman, how does he support your Christian views and your giveaway views? Does he think you're crazy?
Yeah, he does. And for him, it's all about control, keep control. I mean, they own 26% of Pick and Pay, and Pick and Pay they own 26% of Pickwick, and Pickwick owns 26% of Pick and Pay. But so if you calculate it's 26 of 26%, so they exercise control over this company through that very small share. So control is very important. So when we give away control, it's a little bit difficult for him to stomach. But somewhere last year, I felt God say to me, He now wants control. And that was around June. And only about 4 weeks ago could I get myself to the point of doing it. And you know why? At the time when it was bankrupt, it was easy to give him 30% of a bankrupt business, but it's worth much, much more now. Therefore, it's now so much more difficult to give more away. So it took me all these months of wrestling with this to give him control. So I started the process, and I dread the day when he says he wants 100%.
All right. Thank you very much, Bertie.
Thank you.